live here in a second. Bam. What up, Yang Gang? We got a special guest today. We got Ralph Yanis from Humanity First Illinois. Humanity First for Illinois. And 1 year ago, I did a live stream with Jay LaPlante. And then it's been 1 year later, Jay said, hey, man, you mind bringing us back around to kind of do an update about what's going on in Humanity First for Illinois? And Ralph's a new member to the team here. So, Ralph, what brought you to the team and what's your background kind of?
Well, boys, it's interesting. I really saw the need, especially looking at some of the things that have been going on in this world and in this country the last few years, and I saw that this organization, which really is in its infancy, and it's a great organization, I think already was looking for a executive director, a volunteer leader, because at this point we're all volunteers in the organization, and that interested me because it really is a political organization. In my career, I've really had a lot of lives. I started out really doing psychotherapy. I'm a licensed counselor, but I left that behind many years ago, ended up in senior services. I was executive director of an organization in the Chicago area. And that led me, I think, really to my biggest job at AARP, where I spent 4 years as the state director in Illinois, doing a lot of lobbying work, a lot of campaigns, working in the state capitol, but also Capitol Hill and in DC quite a bit, and then a regional vice president for about a decade. So I covered, like a 10, 11 state region for AARP. And so I was really looking to get back. I retired in 2015, and part of it is that I have this later in life muscular dystrophy. So I had a kind of a physical issue, but I was really looking to do something, and this came along. And I think there are some big things ahead of us. I think in Illinois, where we're focused, but obviously the whole country has some big issues coming ahead of us.
Yeah. And so, how long ago did you join the team? First of all.
Just mid-January, I think January 18th, although I was on board a few weeks earlier, just trying to get up to speed. But yeah, maybe 2-3 months at most.
Okay. Well, last year when me and Jay touched base, he had a couple of ideas for funding mechanisms for a statewide universal basic income, and a couple different ideas he had a year ago. So where do you guys stand on what's your main agenda platform right now, a year later?
It really is the same, but it's broader than that. So, if I can maybe speak a little bit to, should I go over maybe who we are first and things like that, what we believe? Yeah, yes. So, basically Humanity First for Illinois is a grassroots, people-driven political organization. As I said, in fact, we are a PAC, a political action committee. And we're also in the process of becoming a 501c4, which again allows us to be political, to lobby. That's different than a 501c3 charitable organization.
Yeah.
And, we really believe that when we, the people, have the power, that great changes can be made and things can happen. So I think in Illinois, especially, we're looking for Humanity First initiatives, which I'll talk about in a moment. But candidates too. We've endorsed candidates. Last year was our first. This year we endorsed a couple of people in these April elections in Illinois, most of them at the local level, which is really where we want to build up the grassroots. And when it comes down to it, I think what we believe is, we envision in Illinois where residents all across the state really have that right to a safe, healthy, and prosperous life, and to do what we are committed to not accepting, for us, for example, corporate dollars, because we really feel we are committed to, it has to be we the people. And, and because of that, that's really why we're fighting, because this is, we see Illinois as the land of Lincoln. And we really believe that, what the history here in terms of, there's been a lot of issues, political corruption, a lot of obviously huge budget problems. We need to turn that around for the people. And that's really where it starts. And so you mentioned, obviously one of the big ones, the universal basic income. But there are really, we consider our platform a 4 points forward. That's what we call it. And those areas are, number one, is really an educated and debt-free workforce. And to us, that really means looking at some way to fund an education for our kids as they go through the university level. That state schools and colleges and universities should be able to provide a free education or some way to really get through that education without entering the workforce with a huge debt. So that's number one. Number two is really the decarbonization, if you want to call it, the green future for Illinois. And, those are two areas we're still working on in terms of our policy papers, our white papers. We have great interns that have been working with us each semester, in the fall of last year, in the winter, and now we have a new group that just started. And I'll tell you, this has really grown because we had over 70 applicants for these 6 positions that we brought in to do our research. And so they're working with Catherine Brown, who's our advocacy and constituent leader. The third area then after the green future is really more, I guess you would call it good government or expanding democracy. So there we're looking at a couple of things like term limits. That's a big one. Illinois actually now is moving finally in the direction of some term limits for leadership. But we really want something a little broader where there is, some term limits across the board. And then, we're looking at the issue of ranked choice voting that is being taken up. I think there might actually be a bill popping up in Springfield on that. And then finally, the big one that you mentioned, which is universal basic income for all. And, I'd like to take maybe, if you want, a little more time to talk about that one. And not only talk about what it is, but also how we're going to pay for it, because ultimately how we pay for that is also how we're going to pay for the education piece, for the green future, and for anything else we need, because we really have, and Jay may have talked about this, last time he was in, but I think there's really that opportunity, I think, to really, look at doing something bigger, and with that money, I think we can get to where we want in all of these areas. But universal basic income, no doubt, is the kind of the big issue, because when you look at the price tag of what we want to do in Illinois, the green future piece might be $1 billion, education might be a little more than that, but the UBI piece, Boyce, we're talking probably $98 billion a year. That's more than double what our state budget is now. So obviously you look at that and you say, how are you going to do, how are you going to do that? Where are you going to bring that money in? But actually, I've talked to a few folks lately who like the idea that we at least have an idea on the table, because a lot of times people want something, but really the paying for it becomes the hard part. And ultimately, there aren't many places you can go to get more money, right? The options are limited. So, so should we talk then a little bit about the UBI and ultimately how we pay for that, which is, again, also how we're going to pay for the other pieces? Does that make sense?
Well, let me try if I can test my memory. I believe it is a transaction tax on Wall Street on, he said on the smallest, I think it was a, was on wheat or some crap. I can't remember what it was. It was a small, it's like he said he based it off the smallest market, whatever it was, the most common trade, and it would fund it like threefold off the smallest one.
Yeah, well, you're almost there, because first of all, it's not Wall Street. So we're talking an opportunity in Illinois, because what it is, it's our Chicago exchanges. So Illinois really pioneered, I think, what we consider the most innovative expression of the free market, which is, the Chicago Board of Trade, the Mercantile Exchange, and the amount of money that goes through. I read somewhere $2 quadrillion a year go through those exchanges.
I have no idea what that number even looks like.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a lot of zeros, but more than that, it's not a transaction tax, and I'll talk about that later too, because there is actually a bill, I think, in Springfield that looks at like $1 per transaction. But the way it works, it's a little different in that in the Chicago exchanges, it isn't like the New York Stock Exchange where it's a transaction. You buy a stock. That's a transaction. Here, what you have are contracts, and those contracts are traded throughout the day and then end up at the end in someone's hands. And so, what we're saying again, because sometimes the criticism of a transaction tax, and again, I know there's one in Illinois that's floating like that, that would be $1 per transaction. But I think the criticism is that that holds back transactions. People then trade less because every time you're trading, you're having to pay another dollar. There's a transaction or whatever it is, and
Well,
yeah.
it's funny they say I maybe I won't trade because of $1. That's a joke.
Well, but if you're making a lot of transactions a day,
Quadrillion, a quadrillion dollars. Like $1 just doesn't seem like it's gonna curb anybody. It's just one of those fear tactics for me.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you may be right, but I think for the individual, remember that can go down from big companies trading to small traders to smaller companies. And if a small company is making, 50, 60 transactions a day, times 30 days, it could add up, I guess. I don't know if people would, I assume on your individual account, if anybody were trading like a small New York Stock Exchange account, and you can trade for free. And a lot these days, a lot of those, new trading, whether it's Robinhood or TD Ameritrade or others have free trading to a certain extent. So people can do 5 or 6 or 10 trades a day and not have to worry about a fee each time they're doing it. So, but you're right. It depends on the size. I mean, if you're a $1 billion company and you're making 100 trades a day, $1 a trade isn't bad, right?
And it's also more penalized. It penalizes you heavily for being a smaller trader as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a flat rate. Yeah.
Right. But again, we're not looking at that. We're looking at ultimately it's different. What we're really looking at is that the equity fee. So again, we're calling this bigger act the Illinois Economic Equity Act, and that's really where we're hoping by the summer to have some piece of legislation. So ultimately, the fee is like 1/10 of 1% on the value of the contract at the end of the period. So in other words, there can be a contract and, I trade it to you, you trade it to somebody else. It gets traded throughout the day. None of us are paying on that, but it's like, think of that game Hot Potato, right?
You pay the fee.
Right. Whoever ends up with it. But what that does is, first of all, it encourages trading, which is a good thing. Again, I think most research has shown that type of trading is going to be good for business generally. And then whoever ends up with it, and that's probably a mix. So that's good because, I may end up with it today, you may end up with it tomorrow, that kind of thing. But it's a very small fee because, again, there are enough contracts and enough transactions going on, ending up in the final one that over the course of, I think, Jay had estimated that probably within 8 minutes of trading each day, you've probably already then traded enough to be able to pay for that equity fee, and then you can trade the rest of the contracts for the last 6 hours and 52 minutes for free. You know what I mean? Now it's important to remember two things here. This transaction, again, not transaction tax, but kind of the equity fee that we're talking about won't affect citizens, which is good. I mean, that's what we're looking at. None of that money will be paid by citizens. The question comes up, though, how much of that will be paid by businesses? And that we don't know, because the information in terms of how traders and companies involved in this trading are affected, we don't have that data. That's something that they hold and don't share. So I would love at some point to be able to get that data so we can figure out exactly, okay, if you're an average trader or a company that is trading a lot, how much will this proposal affect you at the end of the day? Because again, there's a lot of dollars going through there, and we think it can be done in a very equitable way without touching the people of Illinois. They won't have to pay any of that.
Well, and so the idea is you're charging a fee on top of profits necessarily at the end of the day. Well, even if they don't profit, right? It doesn't change anything for them. It's just like on the final day or the final contract is whatever that contract, if it's $1,200 or $12 million, right?
Right. It's 1/10 of 1%.
1/10 of 1%. Yeah. So that's like, that's, so it's $100,000. You pay $10.
Yeah, something like that. Right. But again, there's enough trades there that would bring in about $122 billion.
Right.
And what we're looking at probably for the UBI piece is about 98 billion or so, being able to cover that $1,000 a month for every adult in Illinois who has been here for more than a year. So that's the proposal. So you're talking about that would cost about $98 billion. And then, there'd be money left over for those other pieces too. So that's how we kind of split it up. But, that $1,000 a month is huge, because that would bring probably half the people in Illinois that are in poverty, at poverty level, out of poverty. And obviously those that aren't fully, above that poverty line will be very close to it. I mean, it's a significant amount of money. Have you heard, Boyce, did you hear about the study in Stockton? I wanted to mention this now. Stockton, California. Did you hear about that recently on the news?
Yeah. The data from Mayor Tubbs.
Yes.
And about how much people spent on the big fears. They're going to waste it on booze and drugs. It was less than 1%. Most of it, like 95%, was on basic needs, paying bills, and also paying down debt, which is a huge aspect to me, is because that's one of the biggest problems in this country is debt. It's been outlandish, and so they've showed how it really does make a difference. And there's only 500 people, so that shows you how much of a difference it made in 500 people. Now imagine,
it was $500, right? It was $500. And it was, I think, 125 people.
Oh, that's right. There you go. 125 people, $500. There we go. My bad. Yes.
Right. So imagine 8 million people getting $1,000.
It's 8 million people in Illinois that are over 18.
Yeah. 8 out of like 12 or 12.5 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a lot of money.
And this is all people again. I mean, this is, whether you're undocumented or not, every adult over 18 would get $1,000. And I think what we saw in Stockton is not just that the money wasn't spent on bad stuff, like alcohol and drugs and cigarettes and whatever, but just the way people brought themselves to a different kind of lifestyle, and life really improved.
Mm-hmm.
And it really made a difference in the community. I mean, so much so that they're going to continue it. I mean, this is a project that will continue for them. So I think it's worth the try, and I think Illinois is in a position, because of these markets, because of the financial markets, to try something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And if it works, obviously, I mean, another state may not have that kind of a ability to find money like that in a huge market, but it may give us a national level to say, can we do something like this with the New York Stock Exchange, with other things, to figure it out. I think it just proves that basic income can make a difference in society. That's the bottom line.
Well, and you've got some pretty large cities. The biggest one so far is London, England, is throwing out a pilot program they're going to look into that's been approved for, I can't remember exactly. It's in London, though. It's a London, or in England, I'm sorry. It's in London, shoot.
Yeah, I saw something on that, but I don't remember exactly. But
yeah, but it's international news. Like people doing it all over the country, all over the world. During a pandemic, most countries had a reoccurring cash payment to get you through the pandemic. I think it's gaining popularity, and it's been shown to stabilize their economy. And sorry, guys, my bad. That's my phone. Let me set that on vibrate. But yeah, it's been shown to be successful. It stabilized other countries' economies. They didn't have a drastic drop. They had a drop in trade and business, but their economy didn't implode like ours did for a little bit. But we propped it up with a couple of $1 trillion.
Right.
Come on now. We could have gave that direct stimulus package to people, and that money will still go to the top. It trickles up. Thus, the trickle up, right? We got to do it. We've just got to do it. There's no other way around it. It's the only humane way of stimulating your economy is through humans.
I think we learned some things, right? I mean, during this pandemic, who would have thought that pushing that money out there would do so much good. And so before the pandemic, we have all these issues in this country, and poverty, and lack of education, and people, like you said, with debt. And yet we never imagined that putting that money out there could make such a difference. And here's the thing. I mean, if we can really get to that point where we can give 8 million people $1,000, where will most of that money be spent? Locally, restaurants, stores,
hardware store, home improvements, car improvements, tire changes, oil changes.
Actually, what that does for jobs, right? All these people, needing to, I mean, they're going to need more employees, everything. I think it just makes a big difference across the economy.
Well, I think entrepreneurship will be the explosive local factor. So I live in a small town, and let's say we have 1,000 people that would get a UBI here. That'd be $1 million a month coming to my small town. Now, the economy, so the market system is set up to say, okay, our community will decide what businesses will thrive by where we put our resources. So if you have an aging community like we do here, I think you could start a company here that is building handicap accessible ramps. That alone is a business that would be booming around here. Or any aging community, we have handicap accessible ramps, and if there's a demand, cool, let's have a business. But if there's no customers with resources, that business does not exist. There's a demand, but there's nothing to meet it because there's no resources to inspire someone to start a business, because you're just starting a business for no reason. You're going to lose money. But you're going to have clientele with money,
Yeah, and people really do think that way. I remember, again, just as the pandemic was starting a year ago, I was doing some phone mentoring of a student looking at that was in business school. And when they started talking about that first $1,200 that was going to go out, the first checks that went out, this is like a 21-year-old kid. And I was surprised. I asked him, what are you going to do with this money? And he said, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to buy a beat up old car. I'm going to fix it up and sell it at a profit. And then that's going to be my business. And I hope it grows from there. And I thought, this is amazing that somebody is actually thinking of, starting a business with this $1,200. But a lot of people do that.
Yeah. Well, you can start an online business, honestly, like I know a guy that makes a full-time living off of an Amazon store. He goes to Walmart, and he goes to their clearance aisle and says, okay, they have 55 of these things, and it's got to be light because it's cheap on cost on shipping. He goes there, he buys all 55 of them. He goes to their website and buys them off their website too, ships them to his house for free, and then he individually sells them with a markup. That's what he does for a living.
Yeah,
I
can believe that.
So he spent his bar mitzvah money to start it. That was his seed money. He bought a couple of $1,000 worth of this item and then sold them.
Yeah.
And he's done it ever since. He has employees. I mean, these young people, they have access to so much that, I wish I had that knowledge and access to the internet. I have to rely on Encyclopedia Britannicas to get my information from.
Well, some of these companies too that they're starting like that are going to end up, you'll see, they're going to end up publicly traded companies on the exchange. I mean, they make that leap sometimes, people who started a little, ma pa home business, and all of a sudden it becomes big,
Yeah.
So I just want to invest when it's at $1. So when it gets to, like Tesla or something, right?
Yeah, boy. Yeah. That's kind of like that whole AMC thing that happened in the stocks, where they all saw a real huge overreach on these traders and said, aha, we got you. And they gutted them, and and there's, again, that's access to information. So think about this. If you were someone that had no resources, you couldn't have even taken advantage of a system that all you needed was money to make money with.
Right.
People could find other ways of making money. Like I put half my tax returns into Bitcoin. And it's like gambling, but Bitcoin's a little more solidified now. Like it's a different way of generating. It's like a trust fund for me. It's going to generate money. Every time it makes 400 more bucks, I take the 400 bucks out and I'm going to buy me a couch. Little things like that, like this. Access to resources is capitalism. There is no capitalism without capital.
Well, there's always risk, but you're right. I mean, if you're there and you're investing, and with time, with things go up. I mean, I don't know, Bitcoin, people are saying, well, it's at 60,000, but who knows if in 5 years it'll be at 100,000 or 200,000,
or zero.
But there are, obviously there are good investments and helpful investments. And sometimes, you want to shy away from some of the damaging companies and really focus on some of the do good companies. There's all things out there for all of us, right?
Yeah, for sure. But without resources, none of this matters. It's a moot point.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in terms of closing this piece, then the only thing I'll say is that we want to really make sure that this Illinois Economic Equity Act works. And because of that, I think we set it up in a certain way that, obviously, if this is ever going to happen, it has to be passed by our General Assembly here in Illinois. But our hope is that the treasurer will be then responsible for collecting the dollars, the comptroller for really managing that money, and ultimately the governor have some sort of a commission to oversee, because we want to make sure that money isn't raided. What happens sometimes when there's money, the government finds, right, they'll find a way to, right, exactly. I mean, that money was used for years, and at this point they're going to have to pay it all back, of course, and the government can do that. But the reality is they need to still figure out the solvency on Social Security, because unless they bring more money in, we're not going to have enough at some point to pay the promised benefits. So,
and states can't run on debt, right?
Right. I mean, that's
the federal government.
Right. You have to have a balanced budget. And so I know in Illinois there are two issues. I mean, one is that there was still a bit of a hole for this year's budget that needs to be balanced. And then there's the bigger issue of the pension commitment. And I feel bad about that because, I was, like I said, I worked for AARP 20 years ago as state director in Illinois. And I think at that time that the pension hole was just starting. And I'm upset even with myself that I didn't make more noise at that time, because at that time, back in 2002, it would have been an easier solve. At this point, the hole is so big and so deep. I don't know where you find that kind of money.
The shelf is not big enough to.
Right. Well, that's why, and I know, again, what I've gone over here in terms of the markets in Illinois, I think the reality is if this becomes a real solid proposal, my fear is that it may also be used for other things like closing the pension gap. I mean, we need to do that at some point anyway, but that money, that idea could be taken and used elsewhere. And, we may not be able to give that UBI the real test I want to give it, or we may end up with only half of it or whatever, but I would love to get to be successful here,
My thing is if you guys can get this passed, which will be a freaking huge movement, a huge moment in U.S. history, period. The tourism / people flocking to Illinois will make Illinois as populated as California, because there's going to be opportunities to be an entrepreneur there. Just the facts.
Yeah.
And most states are bleeding people. People are flocking out of California to Texas and Arizona and New Mexico. People are leaving New York City to go to Florida or whatever. And people are leaving Chicago because it's too costly, the cost effectiveness. But the rest of the state, it just becomes a huge recruitment tool for businesses, and then skilled labor. The colleges could be marketed in that way to say, okay, this area needs ABC. We're going to supply it with a new program. All these things are supply and demand, and you inspire people to move there and participate in your state economy.
Right.
That's huge for maintaining your numbers and even growing. I could see it just being huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it can really snowball in a positive way. And, I know it's going to be a tough one. And obviously with that excise tax that we're looking at, there's going to be battles. I mean, we're going to have people stepping up who don't want that. That's happened in the past when it's been proposed. So, as last year, Illinois had that fair tax come up, and it had a lot of opposition from a lot of people, a lot of wealthy people, and ultimately it did not pass. So, this is going to be a tough go, I think, in many ways for all of us.
Yeah, the tougher the climb, the better the payoff. That's what it's all about. It's going to meet a lot of resistance because it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. I always determine how good a cause is by the people it pisses off.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
If it pisses off the Koch brothers, I'm probably okay with it.
Right.
If it pisses off the union workers, I'm probably not okay with it.
Yeah. But I mean, those are we the people. When we say we
absolutely.
the people, the Koch brothers are not necessarily we the people, right?
We are the pawn on their chessboard. They're that type of, they have those types of access to resources to manipulate things. But again, then we could use our money to also get people elected that would support these ideas. That's huge. Like a what's that called? Instead of publicly funded campaigns, you can say accept small donations. Like in New York City, they're doing a 8-to-1 match. So if you live in New York City and you donate to a local campaign, they do an 8-to-1 match. So if you donate $10, the state has a budget to donate $80 more to that person once they meet a threshold.
Wow.
I mean, that type of stuff is inspiring all over the country. But the thing is, if Illinois does this, it'll create a vacuum and it'll force other states to compete. Why would I move out of Illinois to your state? You offer us nothing. You bring nothing to the table. I can't move my business out of here. There's no customers in Louisiana.
Right.
There's no customers in Mississippi and Texas. I have customers here that have guaranteed incomes here that are going to be clients forever, as long as I fulfill a need. So I just think it's, like I said, it's going to be monumental. What's other? Let's go ahead and check out your guys' website too, and kind of see what your other platform ideas are on here, guys. Just so you guys. Oh, also, so the website's humanityfirstil.org.
Right.
Okay. And so then we're gonna bring this. Whoop, that's my Twitter. That didn't work. Where did it go? There it is. Okay, so here's the website, and if you guys want to,
so if you go over to policies on top, you'll see two. Like I said, we're still working on a few of those around the green, stuff and things. But you'll see UBI and term limits are the two white papers that we have out there. So people can click into those definitely and read them. The term limits, I think, are going to be just as important, in many ways.
Absolutely.
And then,
you can download it too. Nice.
Yeah, and then obviously elections. We, like I said, we are doing some endorsement of some local candidates that really fit some of the 4-point forward work. And I think in coming years, that'll get bigger and bigger as we go forward. And, talks a little bit about us, again, who we are and, joining us. And we've been around a year only, but I think we've made a lot of connections with a lot of leaders. And, I think we're moving that along. And I think, to me, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest piece has really been the work by many of our students, many of our interns, and I think for the summer, we'll probably have, again, a number of candidates, much more than we'll be able to take in. But I think, they begin to really do some work doing research on some of these very big issues.
And I want to give just props to the team. There's the leadership team. There we go. There's Ralph. Then we got Catherine Brown, Policy and Constituent Advocacy Coordinator. And then you got back to your principal. So you guys are the two that's really kind of in the driver's seat right now.
Yeah, and Jay is, again, the chair of the board. He had done the interim executive director until I started. So he is building up the board of directors. We have, 3 on the board, a couple of more, I think, starting in April. And eventually, I think we're looking at a board of about 9 people from, again, throughout the state. A lot in Chicago tends to be very Chicago-centric, and we want to make sure that this has lots of people from downstate too.
Right.
In fact, with our interns, we do that. They're all, I think, like the 6 now, 3 of them are outside of the Chicago area. So, I think that's very important for us. So now, if you go into news, boys, like at the end, you see news. Yes. If you hit the newsletter too, you might, let's see, I think we had some articles on or some pieces on. Let's see. I thought we had the newest one, February maybe.
Oh, February is right here. Yeah.
We might have the interns there. I thought, yeah, there we are. So you can see our interns.
Boom, boom, boom. Here they are, the young bucks of the future.
Yeah, and there it mentions the meeting we had with the Illinois comptroller, and then mentions municipal elections, then the interns. So they're doing some great work.
So keep an eye on these kids. These are the future movers and shakers, you know?
Yeah. Like I said, we had some great ones in the winter and in the fall last year. So some of those have moved on already to bigger and better things.
Yeah. But also, so the big thing is, guys, they got the home section, the About Us, and then there's also Join Us. If you want to join the movement, there's a section there that talks about the grassroots power. And then, this is the Learn More section on each one. Oh, then volunteer management. And now, if people want to apply to internship, they can go here, right?
Yeah, if they're students, right, they can apply. Or remember, again, non-students. I mean, we're looking for volunteers. In fact, right now, we really would love another leadership position, a volunteer coordinator.
Again, up in this tab here, the volunteer management tab or the field team.
Good question.
Let's click on it. Let's learn.
Yeah, let's see where it is. I have it separate here. But we should have.
It's not necessarily posted; it's describing what it is here. It says back to opportunities. Let's go to where'd it go?
Going back home. Yeah, I'm looking separately to see if I can find that. But and Join Us. Let me see.
Here it is. Volunteer management coordinator.
You got it. Okay, perfect.
So it's in the leadership tab, guys. If you want to, I'm sorry, volunteer management tab, and there's the opportunity here to be a volunteer management coordinator.
Right. And remember, all of our positions are volunteer at this point. We're looking for people who are looking 10 to 15 hours. I mean, most of the folks that, like Catherine in her leadership position is working a full-time job, and then she does this also, another 10 to 15 hours. So, I'm sure she's been putting even more in than that, because this is a very busy period with the interns starting and everything else. So,
but it lists all the responsibilities, the description, and all the qualifications they're looking for. Yeah, I like this. This is clean.
Yeah. And we just had somebody start as the community outreach person, Kyle. So he's going to be doing a lot of, especially in a post-COVID world. I mean, I can't wait to get out there myself and travel across the state and get into the Capitol again and do some lobbying and whatever it takes. So we're kind of envisioning summer, I think as the vaccines take hold and, the world gets a little better and ready, for some of those face-to-face things again.
Well, we have a question from the comment section. Air Lord says, will the Humanity First for Illinois fight Pritzker? I don't know who that is. He's from Illinois.
Well, he's the governor.
Oh, it's the governor? Okay.
Yeah, Governor Pritzker. Well, I mean, where we have to, yeah. I mean, I think, obviously our concern is that, this UBI proposal could be swiped away, so to speak. And, obviously there may be, we always say that we want to start a conversation. And what that means to me is we're not locked into any idea, but obviously being able to bring in a new set of dollars and then using that just to cover holes and maybe not change business as usual, that's not what we want. So of course, I think we would fight the governor or whoever else was involved in that. I mean, we really are trying to fight that business as usual. And a UBI proposal, if it came down to, we get $500 a month and maybe some of that money is used elsewhere, we'd look at it. But then, we still have the green Illinois stuff. We still have the education stuff and then the election reform. I mean, we'd love to have some term limits and turnover and things like that. So there's a lot to work on.
Yeah, there is. And that's the thing, man. You guys are one organization doing, I think, taking on a really, really a big task at hand and just going at it. And I love that. I wish I had more free time to help with anything. I'm not from Illinois, but I'd love to, I'm doing some volunteering for Rank Michigan Vote. the ranked choice vote organization in Michigan. I think RCV is the top priority for election reform, as well as getting money out of politics.
Yeah.
Those are two big ones that I think every state should be fighting for. But in Michigan, we have direct democracy, so I can just get a couple, like 40,000 signatures and get it on the ballot.
Right.
So that's what I'm hopefully working.
Well, that's a big one. Like I said, that's part of what we're doing. We saw again that there is a bill in Springfield in Illinois, and we've already added our name to that. And obviously a lot of one of those things with the ranked choice voting or term limits is a lot of politicians say they like it until they get in, or something.
Yeah.
Especially the term limits, that changes. But I used to cover, as I said, a region, and there were states that I covered that had term limits. And I think what I saw was this. I'll just be straight. I think there was a lot more sharing of information and a lot less holding back, because information is power. And you look at what happened in Illinois with, Madigan, the Speaker of the House for 50 years. Obviously, that created a lot of problems here, because you had one person with a lot of power because of the information they held and the power they held. So term limits really changes that, and you almost begin to develop leadership, because look, if I'm the senator, but I'm only here for 4 more years, we need to develop leaders behind me, and I need to be able to share some information with them.
Well, I think it also helps build a literal movement of legislators, not just me, the eye in the sky, like I'm going to be the one that leads us forward. No, we have to move forward as a legislative body, because like you said, if we share information, we can do more things. They have numbers, let's be honest, not look to default to authority because you've been there for 50 years. He's the Mitch McConnell of Illinois, like just holding back progress, or only allowing like a kingmaker role where he has all the strings, man. But we do have another question. He says, the same person from Illinois, Airlore, says, do you think Republicans would strike down a UBI proposal just like they did with the progressive tax?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that would be a concern. I mean, we have the Democrats in power. I think what happened was it wasn't so much the voting for the fair tax that it was people voting. Remember, it wasn't politicians voting. But ultimately probably a more conservative side of the state was really putting a lot of money into that battle. And I think there were a lot of confusing messages. I mean, I know a lot of big organizations, including AARP, were saying, vote for this. This is a good tax. But there was a lot of confusion on the airwaves. And ultimately, it wasn't the legislators that voted, but it had to be the people.
That was a ballot issue, right?
And 55% said no. And, I think it's a mistake, because I think it was a way to bring in money really from higher incomes. And it may not be very different than what ultimately we'll see with Biden, once he can get past the current crises. I mean, we need to bring in, a more fair system in terms of taxing. And what Trump had done 4 years ago was really obviously a lot of benefit to the highest income. So yeah. So I mean, it could be. We could see a lot of battle from the conservative side and the business side of the state. But that's why we need to hear from them. I mentioned earlier, we need data and information so we know how this will affect the business community. And that's information that we really don't have fully right now.
Right. I'm looking to the day when a conservative candidate starts running on UBI as a pro-economic package, which I don't know if you know who a guy, his name's Dennis from Idaho. His handle is Trumper for Yang. He's a Trump supporter that is fiscally conservative but socially liberal. And he knows he works in the finance industry. And he's like, if we have a UBI, brother, and AI, like he automated away all of his staff because he could with software. And so he lives in Idaho now, and he still has a business in LA. He's an LA guy, born and raised, living in Idaho, still makes the same money hand over fist because he has less out-of-pocket expenses for personnel.
Right.
At least he saw the writing on the walls. Like, if I can do it, everyone will do it eventually. It just makes business sense. We need to have a UBI and a fair tax code to say, it's not fair that I keep all this. I should be able to kick into a system to help out the people I laid off. Yada, yada, yada. All these businesses are being displaced, or jobs are,
Yeah.
So we need more Republicans, more fiscally conservative people be like, hey, this is fiscally conservative.
Yeah.
It's fiscally responsible.
Yeah, I agree. And that's so hard to get. I mean, I was reading today about the governor in Mississippi turning down $600 million of federal help to expand Medicaid for people who needed it. And he's just not going to do it. I mean, and so a guy like this, I think, is never going to look at a UBI proposal. It's just not going to be on his agenda, no matter what. But we do need more of that.
I didn't know that. I got to look that up.
Yeah, that was in the news today. So
Mississippi governor. Okay.
Yeah.
I got to write this down. Sorry.
Yeah, that story should be out there today, so you should be able to find that.
Yeah.
Yeah, easily. But he's just not going to even take the money from the feds to do it and to expand healthcare and Medicaid coverage to many in Mississippi who need it. So
during a global health crisis.
Right, exactly.
Boy, what an oxymoron. Or just a moron.
Yeah. Right.
That's what we're up against, though. This ideology, this divisiveness that universal means blue and red doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care who you voted for. We don't care how much you make. Do something.
Yeah.
Just do something. Participate. Create. And stimulate the economy.
Yeah.
But I like the green. What are some of the green initiatives you guys like? You guys have specifics on like a solar or wind or?
Well, since we haven't quite gotten there yet with the policy paper, we don't know, other than obviously looking at clean energy and finding ways, tax credits and things like that. Just that decarbonization, because in Illinois, I think that's been a problem traditionally. So, for us, I think we have to put in a significant amount of dollars into changing that. And I've been following at least I think the expectation is over the next few years, solar cars. Look at how many companies, General Motors, by 2030, all electric cars. That's become the new big thing, on the markets. And so I really expect, over the next 5 to 10 years that we're going to see just a big change. But I think we've really pushed up against the limit here. If you see what's happened with the environment, I mean, people are saying, we've waited too long. It's almost too late. What we need to do now has to be big.
Yeah.
And if it isn't big, it's not going to be enough.
Yes, exponential.
Yeah, exactly.
I live in Southwest Michigan. I'm only 100 miles outside of Chicago. So there's a huge wind farm in Indiana along 65, I think it is. Huge. Like there's one point where all you see is wind turbines, 360. It's a really large acreage. I have no idea how big it is, but there's that there. And I think now I'm pro-nuclear when it comes to energy, green energy, because nuclear is green. But thorium reactors is the thing of the future as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure if you guys have explored that. Thorium reactors to replace the uranium enrichment process. I've done a whole bunch of videos on that stuff, but I just think that nuclear is the most efficient way to do it currently.
Yeah, and that may be. I don't know a lot about that. I mean, I know there's been concerns with the nuclear energy, but obviously there's solar, there's there's a lot of other things, the wind, as you said, but nuclear, I think if we can do that safely and cleanly, why not? And a lot of cities, as I've traveled, I mean, you go places like San Diego, they have all their big buses running on natural gas as opposed to petroleum, and yet you come to Chicago and everything is gas and pollution, and it really is a different level. So I think we need to figure out how to do this quickly with the economy.
Well, I think what's unique about Illinois is the transit system that exists in Chicago, which is bar none one of the best in the country. The L.
Yeah.
I love the L. Like I'm coming to Chicago for a spring break with my girlfriend. We're gonna hit up the field and science museums and do whatever we can. I just love coming to the city, but if we had a high-speed rail system that went from Detroit to Chicago, Chicago to Indianapolis,
right? Exactly.
To Green Bay or Madison, Wisconsin, or what I mean, like straight lines, just city to city. You can go from Detroit to Chicago at 240 miles an hour and be there in an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think that would be fabulous, and we need to look at that, and I'm sure we can do that with electrical power eventually.
Absolutely, 100% electrical powered trains.
Yeah,
I'm just fascinated by the technology because I've talked to some people that know their stuff. That's what they do. And I'm fascinated with green energy because we've got a lot of growth still to do because we're not there yet. The battery technology is not there yet. The what do you call it? The solar panels efficiency rate is almost peaked.
mm-hmm.
They need a breakthrough. So the R&D part of it is huge. But I think that if you guys position yourself in the way that you guys can with this type of policy initiatives, that when the technology comes available, you guys will be there because you have the resources to capitalize.
Right. Exactly.
First, and be the innovators.
Yeah, and hopefully these will be big issues even as we get into like mayoral elections in Chicago. I mean, and I hope to be there, with these questions for the candidates because we'd love to endorse one if they can really get into some of these 4-point forward pieces. And we interviewed, for example, Mayor Biss, the new mayor. He just got elected in Evanston, and especially the environmental stuff. I mean, Evanston is north of Chicago. It borders the lake, so it has the lakefront erosion issues. And, the environmental piece was big for him. And we were able to, really say, well, that may be the area we can work with you on because you can be a leader in this country in terms of the environmental stuff. And, that's where Northwestern University is. And we've had students from there. So it would be great to do that.
And the naval base, Great Lakes, Illinois.
Yeah, further north.
Yep. That's where I went. I was in Boot there, man, in December.
Oh, that's not good.
It was not good.
A little windy off the lake in December, right?
Well, and if you're being penalized for poor conduct, you don't have proper gear. They just drop you outside in the yard with no gloves, no hat. Just say, "Drop, idiot." Just have some fun with you, torture you a little bit.
Yeah,
the mental thing. But I'm just a huge fan of Chicago. I'm a big fan of this idea of using what you guys do best, which is money.
Yeah.
The Chicago market, the Illinois Stock Exchange. Is it Illinois or Chicago Stock Exchange?
It's the Illinois.
Illinois.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's the Chicago Board of Trade, but it's
Gotcha.
But it's
Yeah, they get their money too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the fact that you guys have a funding mechanism proposal. Period. It's
not
just talk.
Yeah, that's the key, and it isn't necessarily taxing any people at this point. Again, there may be other opportunities to be able to bring in more tax dollars at the higher ends, but this is really not even touching that at this point. So
if we have people that listen to this and are from Illinois, they can get involved by going to your website. Again, I want to bring that up just to walk it through one more time. At the homepage, about us, join us.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, I'll reach out to you. We'll have a conversation and see, where we can use your energy and efforts.
Mm-hmm. So the volunteer part, then you have the intern part, and you have the management position that's there, internship positions, and the field team. So there's plenty of opportunities to get things done and not sit around and just talk and complain. The talk is cheap,
Yeah. People want to get out after COVID, right? Let's look at this summer and let's get out and do some big things.
Hell yeah, man. And I'm coming to Chicago in 3 weeks.
Ah, good.
Love it.
Hopefully you'll get good weather.
Well, yeah, that's a gamble, but I live in Michigan, so I'm used to it. So it's not like I won't see it coming.
Yeah, that's true.
But there's so many great things in that you could do. Like if you go to Chicago and you're bored, it's your fault. Because you can't claim to be bored in Chicago. There's so much to do there. But if you go downstate, it's very rural, man. A lot of farmland, opportunities for agriculture, opportunities for wind farms, for solar farms. So it's going to be a challenge. Of course, you're going to have a lot of pushback on this because change is hard for people to accept. Especially
if change.
Yeah, it's a radical, not radical. I don't like that word. It's a significant movement in the right direction.
Right, exactly.
I don't like to use that word anymore. I've been brainwashed into that terminology too, But yeah, we've got good. Thank you for doing what you're doing in there. Thanks for joining their team. So I know that Jay has put a lot into this and getting this thing going, and he's the only one I've had direct communication with in the past. So I love the fact that we have people that are taking a leadership position and said, okay, I believe in this. Let's go do this.
Yeah, and we thank you. And I'd love to be back again in 6 months or a year with maybe an update on a real piece of legislation on UBI and some other stuff going on. And as our policy papers go up, we'll make sure we share them with you.
Yes, especially the green one, the energy
Yeah.
one, stuff like that. Yeah, well, we can also share that on the website as well.
Okay, fabulous.
And make a post about that. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, just thank you to all your listeners again, especially those in Illinois. We'd love to hear from you. I'll reach out. We'll set up some time to talk, and I'm sure we have a lot of things we can connect you with.
We got an Illinois guy here. He goes, although I am economically conservative, I agree with you on most issues. Again, the label, dude, drop it. Be a humanist. He says the Illinois GOP Democrats are ineffective. I agree with that a little bit.
Yeah.
The duopoly is what's the problem as far as it's a divisive terminology now. So now we need to drop all those labels and say, listen, I'm for progress, not a progressive, not for a Democrat or a Republican or a conservative. I want progress. Let's agree to move forward on these things we agree upon.
Yeah.
If you worry about the things you disagree upon, nothing's gonna get done. So that's why I like legislation that has fewer things to disagree about. You have 100 items, you need 3 items. I'm not voting for that. I don't like those 3 things. Well, then don't. Just here's 12 things we agree upon. Let's get that done.
Yeah, exactly.
We can debate this later, but today we agree upon this. We want our kids to be healthy, happy, educated, and an employable future, or whatever you want to be, like entrepreneurships, resources, but happy and healthy. Healthcare.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I used to have a grandmother that would say, step by step, we can reach the ends of the earth, but you get there step by step, right?
Yep. Absolutely. It's one step at a time, but I think right now we need some leaps, and I think this is kind of a leap that is necessary, and it's becoming glaringly obvious during this pandemic.
Yeah.
It's become more and more. I think the national crisis has softened up your opposition a little bit now. This is a great opportunity for you guys to really get this thing to drive home, and for Illinois to be the first one, that'd be significant.
Yeah.
I would love it.
That's our hope. We're going to be fighting for that.
The flyover states, we're doing shit over here,
Right. Exactly.
I love it. But yeah, so thank you for your time. We're coming up on an hour. It's actually been a quick hour.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great. I appreciate it.
Do you have a Twitter handle you want us to check? Is it just at Humanity First IL on Twitter as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I follow that one as well.
Yeah, if you look it up there, you'll find it. But we're on there.
And also, guys, if you want to go to the social media site on the page here, let me go back to that. Another easy way to find it is just go here. It's at the very bottom. There it is. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's the easiest way to find their stuff on the website. It's always at the bottom.
Yeah, and we're on LinkedIn too. So it's not there, but you can find us there too.
And the LinkedIn's probably on your Facebook page with a link there too.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's how it all works, right?
Yep.
All right.
Well, have a good one. I appreciate it.
Thank you for everything you guys are doing. Tell Jay I said, hey man, I'd love to catch up with him again. And I'm looking forward to coming to Chicago. So
okay, good. Enjoy your time here.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining. Volunteer. If you don't have money, volunteer. If you don't have time, you probably got money. Donate. You got one or the other. Make something happen. If you believe in
either or both.
You got it, man. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging in with us, man. And we'll see you guys.